Greetings. I'm Victoria Bergvall, and I'm the Secretary for the League of Women Voters of the Copper Country. I welcome you today to a presentation by Faith Morrison. She's the co-president of the local League of Women Voters, and she'll be speaking with you on the importance of knowing what you are signing if you are approached by someone with a ballot proposal petition. This is part of the series of services offered to you by the local League of Women Voters as we strive to provide voters with reliable, nonpartisan information on issues of current voting interest. Faith, can you take this away?
Great. Thank you, Vicki. I appreciate that. Yes, good day to everybody. As Vicki said, this is a presentation on knowing what you should sign in terms of a ballot signature campaign. Today's presentation will focus on the potential ballot proposals that could go before Michigan voters in 2026. This presentation is educational about what petitions are being circulated for 2026 and the proposal that is already on the 2026 ballot. It does not advocate signing or not signing, so we're just educating you today. Before we get into the proposals, I'd like to give you a little history of the League of Women Voters. We were officially founded in Chicago in 1920, just 6 months before the 19th Amendment was ratified and women gained the right to vote. It was formed by suffragists of the National American Woman Suffrage Association, and the League began as a mighty political experiment designed to help 20 million women carry out their new responsibilities as voters. The mission of the League of Women Voters is listed there on the screen. It's empowering voters, defending democracy. We envision a pluralistic, multiracial democracy where every person has the desire, the right, the knowledge, and the confidence to participate. We believe in the power of women to create a more perfect democracy. So it's a characteristic of the League that we are nonpartisan. We do not choose candidates from any side of the aisle, but we do advocate for issues that matter to us and that we consider a vital concern to the public. And so that is why we are taking this step to have a presentation about the ballot proposals in Michigan. So let's get into the ballot proposals. Michigan, all the states have different rules on this sort of ballot proposal action. And in Michigan, we are fortunate to have a constitution that gives 3 powers to its citizens. Not all states provide this. The first power is called legislative initiative and gives voters the right, if certain conditions exist, to initiate laws, initiate legislation. The second power is to invoke a referendum to repeal laws passed by the legislature. And the third power, which is the one most commonly employed, is the power to amend the Michigan Constitution. Nothing in the Constitution may be altered without the approval of the voters. Any action by the legislature to amend the Constitution must be placed on the ballot. So one of the differences among these different types of ballot initiative processes is the number of signatures that are required in order to put something on the ballot. So the constitutional amendments must collect signatures equal to 10% of the total votes cast for governor in the most recent gubernatorial election. So we've looked this up and calculated it for you, and that is 446,198 signatures required. If one wants to initiate new or amend existing legislation, that number is 8% of the number of votes cast for governor, and that's 356,958 valid signatures. And finally, a referendum must collect the smallest number, 5% of the total votes cast for governor in the most recent gubernatorial election, or 223,099. In Michigan, signatures on a petition for a constitutional amendment or initiated legislation are not counted if they were collected more than 180 days before the petition is filed with the Secretary of State. This 180-day window limits the amount of time campaigners have to gather valid signatures. So there's one very special initiative that will be on the ballot in 2026, and that's the one that is called for in Article 12, Section 3 of the United States, the Michigan Constitution. So the initiative to hold a state constitutional convention automatically appears on the state ballot every 16 years. It's enshrined in our Michigan State Constitution, as I said, Article 12, Section 3. The ballot wording is, shall a convention of elected delegates be convened in 2027 to draft a general revision of the state constitution for presentation to the state's voters for their approval or rejection? Because this is part of state law, it's part of our constitution, there's no need to gather signatures for it, and it will be on the ballot in 2026. So now getting into the ballots that you may be asked, the petitions you may be asked to sign. This is the first one I want to describe for you. The Americans for Citizens Voting has 2 constitutional amendments approved by the Board of State Canvassers. It is unclear if the sponsor will be gathering signatures for this particular one. This version will require documentary proof of citizenship for newly registered voters. So here's the wording of the 100-word summary for petition number 1. It's in bullet point form. Require Secretary of State to verify citizenship of all registered voters, document citizenship, remove non-citizens using governmental records, and track separate eligibility requirements for federal and state local elections. Second bullet point. Prohibit counting ballots from voters with unverified citizenship unless voters show documents to Secretary within 6 days post-election. Third bullet point. For new registrations, require proof of citizenship by showing birth certificate, passport, and/or other documents. Fourth bullet point. Eliminate affidavit alternative for voters without photo ID. Next bullet point, require photo ID or driver's license or partial social security numbers to vote absentee. And the last bullet point, require state-funded hardship program for obtaining required documents. Subject violations to a $1,000 fine or up to 5 years of imprisonment. So as I said, this set of petitions, there's a second one by the same group, which is actively circulating right now, which is why we said that it's not clear whether that first one will circulate. So the Second Amendment from American Citizens for Voting is pretty certain that the sponsor will circulate petitions for this version. This proposed constitutional amendment will also require documentary proof of citizenship for new voter registrants, as well as those voters updating their registration. Here's a wording for the 100-word summary, also in bullet points. A constitutional amendment to require citizenship verification for all voters, parentheses, birth certificate, passport, and/or other documents. Remove non-citizens after notice and 45-day rebuttal. Third bullet point, beginning November 2nd, 2027, prohibit counting ballots for voters with unverified citizenship unless documents shown to election administrator within 6 days post-election. Fourth bullet point, eliminate affidavit alternative for voters without photo ID. Next, require photo ID or partial social security number to vote absentee. And last, subject violators to fine and/or imprisonment. As noted on the slide, this needs that largest amount, 400,446,198 signatures by July 6, 2026. This next initiative is by a different group. This is another proposal. It also requires documentary proof of citizenship for newly registered and currently registered voter. And the 100-word summary goes like this. Require Secretary of State to verify citizenship of all registered voters, document citizenship, remove non-citizens using governmental records, and track separate eligibility requirements for federal and state local elections. Second bullet. Prohibit counting ballots from voters with unverified citizenship unless voters show documents to Secretary within 6 days post-election. Third bullet. For new registrations, require proof of citizenship by showing birth certificate, passport, and/or other documents. Fourth bullet. Eliminate affidavit alternative for voters with. Next, require photo ID or driver's license or partial social security number to vote absentee. And finally, require state-funded hardship program for obtaining required documents, subject violations to $1,000 fine and/or up to 5 years imprisonment. So all three of the proposals that I've mentioned will require documentation, a photo ID, a driver's license, birth certificate, a U.S. passport, or other documents. Many of these documents are costly and could be difficult for some voters. If more than one of these ends up on the ballot, the one with the most votes is the one that will change the constitution of the state of Michigan. So segueing from voting rights, this next one is the Rank My Vote petition. And the 100-word summary goes like this. Voting RCV for federal offices, governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, and secretary of state, allowing voters to numerically rank candidates by voter preference starting in 2029. Second bullet, count votes in rounds, eliminating lowest ranked candidate and reallocating their votes to remaining ranked candidates until candidate with the most round votes is declared the winner. Third bullet, allowed voters to rank at least 4 more candidates than positions to be nominated elected unless insufficient number of candidates. Authorize local jurisdictions to adopt use of RCV in local elections. Move August primary to June or earlier in even year elections. And the final bullet point, require legislative funding and implementing legislation. So because this is a constitutional amendment, also need the larger number of signatures in order for it to appear on the ballot. The next petition is Axe My Tax. The 100-word summary for Axe My Tax, bullet point 1, prohibit real and personal property taxes, currently the primary funding source for counties, municipalities, schools, community colleges, parks, and voter-approved bond repayment. Second bullet, increase a portion of state sales tax redirected to cities, townships, and villages from 10% to 13.3% and from 0% to 6.67% for counties. Third bullet, shift 10% of state income, marijuana, alcohol, and tobacco tax revenue to local governments. Allow use of this revenue only for listed essential government and infrastructure services, but not for schools, community colleges, parks, or local government services. And the fourth and final bullet point, requires 60% voter approval for local tax increases, require 2/3 vote of the legislature for tax increases greater than 0.1% over 5 years. It's a constitutional amendment proposal, and it needs that larger number, 446,198 valid signatures by July 6, 2026. The next initiative is voters to stop pay cuts. And this is a referendum, which is the one that addresses legislation that was already passed by the legislature. And the items listed on the slide will become law if passed. The specifics are in the 100-word summary, which includes bullet point 1, decrease the minimum wage from $13.73 to $13.29 in 2026, and from $15 to $14.16 in 2027, with annual inflation-based increases thereafter. Increase tipped worker wage to 48% of the full minimum wage in 2025, 60% in 2026, and 70% in 2027, 80% in 2028, 90% in 2029, and 100% in 2030. And the final bullet, eliminate civil fines for employers failing to pay minimum hourly wage. Because this is a referendum, if enough valid signatures are collected, the repeal of Public Act 2025 would appear on the November 2026 ballot, and it needs 223,099 valid signatures taken in the 90 days prior to the election. One more, we're not done yet. Invest in my kids. This is also a constitutional amendment. Its 100-word summary includes, beginning in 2027, impose an additional 5% tax on annual taxable income over $1 million for joint filers and over $500,000 for single filers. This tax is in addition to the existing state income taxes and deposited into the state school aid fund. require that money from this tax be used exclusively on local school and district classrooms, career and technical education, reducing class sizes, and retaining teachers. Final bullet point, prohibit use of the money for other purposes with spending subject to annual audits. As a constitutional amendment, it needs the full 446,198 valid signatures by July 6, 2026. And money, Michiganders for Money Out of Politics. This is also a constitutional amendment. It is an initiative with the 100-word summary that includes, beginning in 2027, impose an additional 5% tax on annual taxable income over, excuse me, I'm reading the wrong one. I'm meant to be reading Michiganders for Money Out of Politics, and I was reading the wrong one. I apologize. The 100-word summary of this initiative includes prohibit regulated electric and gas utilities, contractors with over $250,000 annually in government contracts, and people and organizations with substantial connections to these utilities contractors from making direct or indirect campaign contributions to those who run for or hold offices that impact them. Second bullet, expand campaign finance laws and restrictions that regulate spending on political communications, including laws that require disclosing donor information to apply to communications clearly identifying candidates for ballot questions, even if they do not expressly advocate voting for or against them. And then finally, expressly apply the law requiring disclosure of who paid for political communications to internet political communication. So this initiative requires the 356,958 valid signatures by May 29th, 2026. So that is the end of the different initiatives that are on the ballot. And we have a few more things to pass on to you. And this slide shows how a petition sheet should appear. There are certain requirements on the petition sheet, including in 8-point type, the name and address of the person, group, or organization paying for the printing of the petition form, preceded by the words, paid for with regulated funds by name here. This is Michigan Comprehensive Law 169.247. There are no exceptions to that rule. It's also important for the audience to understand that the Board of State Canvassers approves a 100-word summary, and I have been quoting from the 100-word summaries. If it was submitted, it's not required. The fact that the Board of State Canvassers has so-called approved these petitions does not approve the merit of the petition, but only that they have found that the expression in the 100-word summary does in fact describe what the petition does. So before a voter puts their signature on a petition, they should take the time to fully read, understand, and verify what it is asking for, what the potential consequences are, and who is behind it, so that they are making an informed decision. It's essentially a reminder to be informed and cautious so voters don't accidentally support something that they may disagree with or that has hidden implications. So we're also providing some trusted resources that can help voters understand the petition and voting process. So on this slide, you'll see the URL for the Michigan State Board of Canvassers for Vote 411 for nonpartisan voter information, the Michigan Voter Information Center, the League of Women Voters of Michigan, and the Petition Manual Resource page from the Secretary of State's office. And I want to give one more shout out to the League of Women Voter. You're invited, if you're not already a member of the League, to join. It's open to all who are age 16 and over. You do not have to be a woman. We have many male members. Joining automatically confers membership at the local, state, and national level, and membership provides the opportunity to be actively involved in local, state, and national issues. The URL for the Michigan League is shown on the screen, or you can visit us at the Copper Country League at lwvccmi.org, and you can join us there. So Vicki, thank you for introducing me, and I imagine you have a few questions. I'd be happy to answer them at this time.
Thank you very much, Faith. I really appreciate you doing this. This is a really important service because as if you've ever tried to read these ballot proposals, you often get thrust a petition and you are asked to sign before you have a chance to read all the very fine print on the back page. And so I really recommend that voters stop and read these pages and look more carefully at the websites provided there to really read exactly what they say, because this is very sometimes the wording can be very tricky and not always what they present it to you when they give you the ballot proposal. They are not required to tell you all the details and or sometimes even the wrong details. So thank you, Faith. I appreciate you providing this information for us. I have a couple of questions just to clarify some things. Um, Back on the Citizens for Americans for Citizen Voting, this goes back to number one, but it also applies to number two. Aren't there already laws in place that require citizenship to vote?
That's correct. Yes, it's already illegal for non-citizens to vote in federal and state elections. Ineligible people, including non-citizens that seek the right to register to vote or to vote, could face fines, imprisonment, or the possibility of deportation. Um, these three initiatives that require documentary proof of citizenship add extra hurdles for eligible citizens without solving a real problem.
So it don't already there are already things in place, right? So how many non-citizens actually vote?
Right. So following a 2025 review of voter rolls, Michigan found that non-citizens accounted for approximately 0.00028% of all the ballots cast in the 2024 general election. So that's 15 confirmed or suspected case of non-citizens voting out of 5.7 million votes. So it does occasionally happen. You may have seen the case in Ann Arbor where a student at the university was confused about his right to vote, and he was caught and arrested and unfortunately prosecuted for that. So it's a very serious felony if you do attempt to vote when you're not a citizen,
Okay.
and it's
So
not happening very often.
yeah, yeah. So why is there concern about providing these documents? I have a passport, I've got a driver's license that has the real ID, and I'm good.
Right. Well, I mean, some of these, and you'll have to look carefully at which ones, they require that you continuously, every time you re-register or move, you have to reprove your eligibility. You can't lean on your previous registration. And you have to have documents in your original birth name, which affects every woman who changes her name on marriage, or any men who do that as well. It affects people who maybe have lost documents in fires or other ways. And it's just an additional hurdle that can be expensive for people who sometimes don't have the means to pay the fees to replace their documents.
This wasn't covered very well, but I noticed that a couple of these, the number one on the Americans for Citizen Voting and on the third one, the protect the voters' rights, both, have something there that says that they would have a hardship program for people who have funding problems with that. That
Mhm.
seems to be a really good idea.
Yeah, I think we have that already actually in Michigan, but don't quote me on that one. But that is meant to address some of the concerns about the cost to individuals who may need to replace their documents.
Or who never had a birth certificate in the first place. If they weren't born in a hospital, they may not have been.
If they're old enough, that could be the case,
Yeah.
right? Right.
So, okay. And then just let's see. I had another question. Let me see if I can find it really well.
Mhm.
It's not here. I can't find it fast. The
Okay.
important point is that there's so much detail here. It's really hard for any one person to keep in their mind. And so again, go to the websites to read more about these. If you have a chance to slow down, if someone asks you to sign something, read more about it in the back page and take the time, because it's not just agreeing, it's a matter of some of these things are have consequences that you may not agree with. So I
That's right.
encourage you to
That's
read carefully.
Yep, good. That's a good suggestion. And just want to thank everybody for watching. And please do see those resources on the last few slides if you have more questions. So thank you again, Vicki, and thank you everybody for coming.